Welcome to the Impact Over Optics podcast, a place where real progress shines beyond appearances and distractions. Here, voices from across industries come together to share wisdom, stories, and strategies that remind us what's possible when purpose leads the way. Because true progress is not measured by how it looks, but by the impact it leaves behind. Let's get started.
Welcome to Impact Over Optics, the podcast where we go beyond appearances and focus on what really moves the needle: authentic leadership, purposeful results, and lasting impact. I'm your host, Dave Dieffenbach, and today I'm joined by Paul Neuner, a person I've known both as an important coworker and a friend in my life, someone who values authentic friendship at least as much as I do. Paul earned his master's in sports management and worked in minor league hockey for a number of years before moving into veterinary health. He's held various global product management roles within reference laboratories, water microbiology, and emerging product development for over 2 decades. Paul is based in Portland, Maine, and has 3 teenage kids who like to remind him how old he's getting, and sometimes those kids call me Uncle Dave. How are you doing today, Paul? Thanks for joining.
I'm good. Thanks for having me on.
You're welcome. It's great to have you here. We've been friends for a long time, and this month's podcast topic is on friendships that heal. The topic really is broad, and we're gonna explore a lot of different topics. We did certainly in our group earlier this month. But before I start, we'd like to get to know a little bit about our guests just in general. Tell me a little bit about a project or something that you do for fun that you'd like to share.
Yeah, it's I'm on Zoom calls and computers and spreadsheets all day, and it's so for me to get away from that. One of the things I used to do and I've dusted off recently is upcycling. So I'll take something like a whiskey bottle, for example. I know you're aware, and slice it out and make a whiskey glass out of it, or a tray, or make something where, a glass bottle that would end up in a landfill or just be on the side of the road smashed, use it for something else, use it for a different purpose. So it's more for fun. It's not really a side hustle right now, but it's a creative outlet, and I can walk away from it and I can look at it and go, oh, I did this. Here's what I did today, which is a little different than, my day-to-day, what my job is, which is, walk away and go, I know I got something done today, but I can't actually see it. So sometimes it's fun to viscerally see what's going on.
That's cool. Is the Portland Alchemy website still active?
It is. It is. I think there might even be some stuff on Etsy or something. Well, I have no idea. I haven't checked.
Remind me, and we'll make sure that's in the show notes for folks, so they're not just looking at your LinkedIn profile. They can see the side of you.
Okay.
I received one of those as a gift one time. It's basically, take a whiskey glass. It's no longer at use. Now it's a drinking glass. It's a really cool thing to do. Cool. Well, let's jump into the topics here. So we sat around the group of us, the consultants in this podcast, and we talked about friendships a bit ago. And we started really with the same topic I want to ask you, which is when you think back to your earliest friendships, what did being a good friend mean to you?
Yeah, I think that's where, you sort of figure it out. And it's, I think we became friends with, I think back to grammar school era, and it was just where we were in a communal space. So intramural basketball, or going to church, or going to school and being in the same classes and things like that, where you had those shared experiences. And then, a little bit from there evolved to this person's laughing at the same thing going on in class that I am, or not only we're in the same space, but we sort of have we're creating or developing a similar view in life. And so, but I think, being, I guess, young, it was a lot simpler. And so it was just those things oh, I'm going to so-and-so's house, so we're going to play video games. And that was about it. And you go over and, at least for me, it's you go over, you play video games, hang out. And then you go home and have dinner, and, you move on with your day. But that's your friend. And, that's your friend because you get to do those things and have those shared things you enjoy.
Right. That's great. And I oftentimes talk on the podcast about the books I read, and David Brooks, an author, writes a lot of nonfiction, a lot about connections. He talks about one of the things that's hard about adult friendships is finding that proximity. So you're near someone, but also shared purpose. It's not just enough to be near someone, but you also need shared purpose. As a kid, really all you do need, like you said, is proximity. You just need to be near somebody. And maybe one thing that you in common, right? You like to kick balls, so do I.
Right.
When you moved into adulthood, when did you first notice that adulthood started to feel more light and play?
Yeah, it's probably, I don't know that this was dissimilar from anybody else, but that transition from college into adulthood. College was, for me anyways, it was, you go to high school, you go to college, and then you move on. I think it's a little different these days, but I think for me, it was super structured. And, I ran competitively in college. And so like you went to class, you go to work, study, you go to work, you do this, boom, boom, boom. And like everything was laid out. And once you get out of school and you get out of that sort of prescriptive, here's what your whole week, here's what the next 6 months looks like, I gotta okay, I gotta figure this out. What does this look like?
Yeah.
Um, and I guess, the whole purpose is you have the tools to figure it out, but it's still hard to figure it out. And then, you layer on life and getting married and having kids and a mortgage, and I don't, all of those things. I think there's no one silver. I don't think there's any one like this is what it is. I think it's a compilation. It's a compilation of all of those things that are just part of life that you don't really or at least I didn't experience in that early phase or growing up, or was insulated from it. It's like, oh wow, this is pretty stressful, or
Yeah.
feels pretty stressful. Yeah.
You and I both are lucky, I think, in a lot of ways because we had relatively stress-free childhoods, meaning we were allowed to play, right? We didn't have
Hmm.
some of those aggressive early introductions to adulthood. But even when you were talking there about some of those adult things you do, married kids,
Hmm.
those are all wonderful things, but they add a layer of heavy,
Hmm.
perhaps. And what we talked about last time as a group too is childhood. We talked a lot about play as part of childhood. Can you reflect on whether or not you've lost that version of play as an adult, or maybe you had it in college because running was all play? Where does play fit in?
Yeah, I think it's just changed. I think the like what constitutes play, it's just sort of morphed
Yeah.
as I've like gone down my path. What I do for play is is different. Play for me can be putting on a Spotify playlist of like 80s and 90s rap and just
Yeah.
sitting there and listening to it. Where somebody else may come in and go, "What are you doing?" And you're like, "Oh, just listen to the music. I'm playing. I'm going back in time in my head. I'm playing." Playing can be going out for a run when it's like a really nice day and just kind of plotting along and going, man, this is awesome. The sun feels great. The wind feels like this is beautiful. And to me, like those are the things I appreciate, or I call play, where not the traditional, like I'm going to go out and ride my bike in the neighborhood and go down to the playground and go over to so and so's house. I'm like that traditional, like that's playing. I think I try to find spots or I call it like, stealing moments of playing because life's busy. And I think we don't do enough of it, and it's structured. And I think some of the other pieces too, it's really important to play as an adult, hard to find it, but being more intentional about doing that is better. I think it's similar to, I know, self-care, where doing that makes you better in all other areas of your life.
No doubt. And I appreciate all those answers. I think I like to talk about trying to aggressively carve out time for play, right? For
Hmm.
my time, I don't want to, but I like what you said there about stealing moments. If you can't schedule it,
Hmm.
steal the moments, right? To make sure you're making the time to find moments of play.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes, you got to sharpen your elbows. We were just as just a very immediate example. I had a friend yesterday call me and say like, "Hey, I'm in the neighborhood. You around?" And I had some time in my calendar, and I was like, "Yeah, swing by." And we went for a walk. And so that's not like, we weren't like out shooting baskets or like running or like, but we went for a walk. That's, to me, I would consider that, or I'd put that in the playing bucket of, hey, I connected with a friend that I really hadn't connected with in a while or hadn't seen in like one on one, like, how you doing? How you doing? And that was great. And I'm glad I did it, got back, like kind of moved right back into the flow of work for the day, didn't miss a beat, and it was, I got all my work done and I fit in that play. But, um, for me, I had to make that decision where it was like, hey, are you around? Well, I could have worked on spreadsheets and I could have worked on presentations that I got done anyways by the end of the day. I could have done them then, but I was like, nope, I got some time and he's got time. Like, let's do this.
Isn't it amazing how those moments when you actually gift yourself, you say, screw it,
Hmm.
I'm going to go do that. How later you're like, wow, I really couldn't have gotten that time back, right? All that stuff you did before. And this
Yeah,
is a podcast,
right.
ostensibly this podcast is about leadership. But a lot of times we end up talking about the ways we use our time to support our ability to lead.
Hmm.
And you're still going to get your stuff done, right?
Yep.
And this moves into, you actually brought up the term, but when you talk about self-care through friendship, what type of emotions come up when you think about that?
Well, I think I would define self-care. I think I'd define self-care in a friendship as I think there's got to be a few things there in order to do self-care. Like, I think, in a friendship I think you've got to have this level, or you've got to have this experience or this history of trust, of knowing who this person is that you're practicing that self-care with. But I think, self-care can be a lot of different things. I mean, I think it could be something like meeting up with this friend and you're having a stressful situation and just like venting and having that other person listen. Like, that can be self-care. I think it could be doing something together, going for a hike, going for a run, practicing that self-care. You can practice that self-care, but still show up and be a friend in those scenarios too. So I think, but I think that base has to be there in order to do that. I don't think like a new friendship showing up as self-care. I think it could be construed as selfish or standoffish, or sort of taking more out of the friendship than giving back. Not that keeping score ever works, but
Yeah.
like just presenting it or being a one-way street. I think if you've got that history there, that it's easy to practice that sort of self-care and be that person.
That's all great, but I have to admit, I had a mental image halfway through thinking of your oldest daughter. And I'm picturing her as a kid just grabbing another girl's hand she just met on the playground and saying, "We're going to be best friends now," and sort of forcing the friendship, that childhood thing of. And as an adult, you're absolutely right. You need to build the
Yeah.
trust before. But as a kid, sometimes you're like, "This is friendship. We're friends now, right? We'll be
Well,
friends forever."
well, that's the like, hey, like we're at the playground together, and hey, we both like the teeter totter. That's it. We're
That's
best
right.
friends. That's it. Done deal. It's that shared experience. It's that like way of looking through the world, and like in that proximity where you're just like, yeah, this is here we are. Here we are.
And
I'll see you when you're 80.
Molly, if you're watching this podcast or listening at all, I'm sorry if I offended you, but just a humorous image of you as a kid. You don't remember that person. Cool. So let's move into just a little more depth here because we've been friends for a long time. We actually met at work. I
Yeah.
would say that if I go back to David Brooks, one of the reasons we became friends was we didn't even work together at the time, but it's because we were finding reasons to get together, but we had a shared passion in running. So we would go off running together. But then life evolves, right? We've a couple of decades of friendship. Life's gotten heavy.
Mhm.
Illness, divorce, business stress. What's surprised you, or how has friendship showed up for you in an adult when things get a little more tense?
I think in those tense moments, and I think this applies to leadership as well. So I'll bring that into it. I think
Thank you.
for me, the friends that showed up in a way that either in the moment or reflecting back, where I was like, that's exactly like for me, this is sort of self-care. What I needed was someone that listened, and didn't listen, but without a mindset or an angle of, oh, I've got a solution, I can help you fix this, or well, you should, or well, and it's just like, just listen. Because a lot of those things, sickness, divorce, job stuff, I think kind of the unfortunate reality is you're kind of going through it yourself. You have to go through it yourself. You can't do what somebody tells you to do. You see somebody else do it and like, oh, I'm going to do that. Unless that's what you're deciding and what is best for you, you can't do something because somebody else does it or tells you to do it. You have to make up your own decision, and that's really hard. And so sometimes, the friendships for me, and especially for you, showing up in my hard moments is just listening, and like that's the ball game. Like just listen. That's all you got to do is be there and listen. And at some points, to be fair too, because that trust is there and that history is there, is to say like, you're being a real dumbass, Paul.
Yeah.
Sometimes I am. And so like, wait a minute, I didn't think about it like that. All right, cool. Thanks. I appreciate that. So that the trust, or the kind of the safety, the barriers there, the safety there to go, Paul, you're being a real dumbass right now. And for me to not also to understand from the other side of like, I see Dave's coming at this from this way. All right, I'm going to think about it this way. And it's not a defensive reaction on my part or a solution from your part. It's just a response to whatever is coming up.
Yeah.
And so I appreciate that.
No, go right ahead.
The other thing with friendships too is, I did notice thinking about it, some friendships faded during those times. And I don't know, I think for a variety of reasons, maybe the friendships weren't as solid, and that's okay. Friendships ebb and flow over time. Even good friendships ebb and flow over time, but those friendships that were there aren't there anymore, and they were there for a time and served a purpose, but they just aren't. It's not part of that my world anymore. If they came back, or if it was something that happened again, that's no problem. There's no love loss, or there's no hard feelings. It's just some friendships they didn't serve the purpose at those those hard points, and they just sort of faded a little bit.
Yeah, you're basically talking the talking about that David Brooks book, because you do, if you don't have a shared purpose anymore, friendships will drift. And let's go back to childhood. In childhood, you get really upset if you felt like you were losing a friend. And of course, there's dramatic loss of friendship. Someone wrongs you, so you have to sever friendship. But a lot of times it's just you've got a new friend, and that other friend, you don't have time for them anymore. As an adult, I mean, especially my adult friends like you with kids, you get busy. So you end up having friendships redefined. And so I like to think sometimes those friendships are paused because you could pick them up again, but they're definitely different. And there's some saying, some woo-woo saying you'll probably appreciate, which is friendships come in for a reason, a season, or a lifetime. And some of those are just seasonal, right? Right.
Yep. It does. It seems that happens.
So we've worked together. We're much stronger friends than we were workmates. I talked last time when we talked as a group about how I intentionally blur the line sometimes with work specifically, where I want to get to know people. Have you found yourself intentionally blurring the line between work and friendship in your work life?
I'd say yes, but a little bit. But I'd say one supports the others. It's always easier to pick up the phone or have a conversation, whether it's difficult or whether it immediately needs to happen and not difficult. If I have a friendly relationship with somebody, it's harder to pick up the phone with somebody where I go, all right, I got to make this call. And, you still have to do it, but it's harder. It's a harder conversation to have. And then when you're having the conversation, there can be something that pops and you're like, oh, you don't have that level or that level of trust or that understanding. I think friendships to a point, I think they help out tremendously at work.
And then for me, the reality of those friendships is that you're right. You can't go always as deep with everyone, but it's nice to know someone's more than just what they did for the weekend, to know a little bit about what makes them tick, so that if you do find a shared interest, then you might go out for coffee and develop a friendship, right? You have to your point at the beginning, you're spending all your time with these people, or a lot of time.
Yeah. I mean, you spend probably, I mean, not you, but spend more time with work folks than family, friends, over during your working years than, with family or friends. And
no doubt.
I think that friendship component at work, or even in being a leader, is understanding if somebody's having a bad day, not necessarily understanding all of the details and all of the drama or what's going on behind the scenes, but having a sense of who a person is and giving them, I guess, a little bit of grace and say, like, okay, I get it. You may have some stuff going on that you can or can't control in your life. Like, okay, I get it. Or asking somebody on a call or starting a call and being like, hey, you went skiing last weekend, how'd it go? You said you were going skiing. What was it like?
Yeah.
It's, just because you work with somebody, it doesn't mean it just has to be 100% work. It's interesting to find out what other people are doing, where they're coming from. And I think it just helps that balance.
Yeah, for sure. And then maybe there's levels of friendship in that too. It makes life more interesting, spending all these time. We're working our way here towards the rapid reflection questions. This is the part of the podcast where just say what comes to mind, even though you saw the questions ahead of time. What's still hard about friendship as an adult?
I think it's being intentional. There's so many pulls or opportunities to do things in life or to do other things other than focus on a friendship. And that can be scrolling on your phone. It can be something like that, where instead of texting or calling a friend. So I think being intentional and going, I am going to reach out to this person. I'm going to go visit this person. I'm going to go do that. I think I think it's tough because there are a lot of options to do a lot of other things as well.
Yeah. You can also send them horrible memes on Instagram, right? If you need to just stay
That's
connected.
true. Well, that's sort of a connection.
Yeah.
I don't think that's a bad thing. I think that's
No.
a skill. I think that's a learned skill.
Yeah, I'm glad. I mean, put that on your resume for sure. So next question: If someone is feeling particularly successful in work, but feeling actually isolated, what might you ask them to consider about friendships as a way to solve that?
Well, I would argue, I'd maybe suggest, like, what's your definition of success? Because for me, success isn't everybody at work loves me and I love everybody at work, but maybe having those friendships that we just talked about at work, but also having friendships outside of work also feed and fuel what you're doing in every part of your life, and that includes work. So if that person has a longing, or that person feels like there's a gap there on their friendships, I would say I would suggest looking into it. What does that look like? And is there something you could change that would make it feel better, more, I don't know, positive or more fulfilling? But for me, part of the word, success would be having some close friends.
That's especially important as we have aging parents, right? And I watch my father, and he's desperately trying to make friends, and I keep asking him why he's not cultivating his current friendships, right? It's easier to maintain your current. So make the friends, build them, keep them. That's good advice. What's more important right now for you? Play more, trust more, or ask more?
Play, always play. I think to do that, I think you've got to have the trust, and you've got to be able, if you've got the trust, you can ask. I think they all go together, and I think the trust starts first, and finding that trust, going from trust to, if you trust, you can ask, and you can ask questions, you can ask for things or ask about things. As long as you can do that, I think I think for me, the most important thing is to get to play, because I think those other things are there if you can play. And also, playing is fun and creative, and it can be creative. It's like upcycling.
Like, life's too short. We'll put the upcycling thing in the show notes for sure. Generally, we last final question is, if listeners walk away with just one message from you today, what would that be?
I would share what I've told my kids, like, to move through there's 3 things you have to do in life. And if you can do these, they're really simple to say and they're really hard to do. But if you can do them, not all the time, but focus on them, be consistent, you're going to do pretty well. And the first one is show up. Just be there. Show up in person or over text or wherever you're showing up, whether it's virtually or in person. The other person knows that you're there. Show up. Second thing is be nice. Being nice doesn't mean giving everybody hugs all the time and telling them they're amazing. And it can be, like, that is being nice. That's a lot of being nice. But be nice to people. Be respectful. Understand, people have bad days, including you. You might have a bad day. So you try to do it all the time. You're not going to bat 1,000, but try to do it all the time. And the third thing is tell the truth. All you got, all your stuff, everything can go away. Your car can be gone. You can have holes in the bottom of your shoes, but the only thing you've got is what you say. Tell the truth. Sometimes it hurts, and this is where it's hard to do this all the time, but tell the truth. So show up, be nice to people, and tell the truth. And if you can do that, you're going to be a good human, and you're going to contribute in your community and where you work, and to your friendships, and to you and your family. Like, you're going to be in really good shape.
That's a great way to close. Great sage advice. I really appreciate that. And I will challenge all 3 of your children next time I see them to see if they're following their father's advice.
Well, see if they remember. See if they just remember it first of all. But I'll send them. I'm going to send them all a text before you get to town, just so that they know. So it feels like I'm doing maybe a better. It feels like I'm doing a good job.
That's good. Well, good. Well, we'll see how that goes. Well, I'm gonna wrap this up. Thank you, Paul, for joining me and joining us on the Impact Over podcast. Please follow Paul on LinkedIn and on any links I put in the show notes. Till next time, I'm Dave Dieffenbach. Remember, authentic change always outlasts appearance. Lead with purpose and leave a real mark.
Thank you.
Thanks again for joining us on the Impact Over Optics podcast. We hope today's insights sparked fresh ideas and reminded you of the power of purpose-driven work. Please share this episode with others who believe in real change, and join us again as we continue to look beyond appearances and focus on the impact that truly lasts.